Hi, Adam Taxin here in a place called Madelaine Key, Florida, in Pinellas County. You can look back and have a view more closely of St. Christopher Key, and I guess it's Mullet Key behind that, and that's the Gulf of Mexico, or some inlets here. I'm continuing to try to sort of parody the media while providing more useful, relevant, and better thought out information than you might get. Yeah, it's a parody of all those companies that seem to try to make their news more real, which is news often with opinions, of course, by having a city, right in the middle of a fancy city background in the background when they're really just in front of a green screen. But here, I actually am here in Florida, and I may have the tick bites to prove it. Who knows from where I am? But as usual, let us just talk about the news. What's going on? This is essentially a news report. I try to give you something interesting to look at rather than some fake center of a city. Why not have something to look at? You can not look at this. You can just listen to me talk, or you can turn the volume down and not listen to me talk, or you can not do anything with it. You can turn it off. I don't know. I don't care. It's not my problem, but I'm trying to give you a midday report and just talk about the issues people were talking about this early. I'm capable of having original thoughts and hopefully some clever insights, but that's not my point here. My point here really is to bring you the most intelligent things other people are saying. There's so much good stuff out there, as I talked about last night with Keith Levenberg. If you watched that on Facebook Live, I haven't put it on YouTube. There's a lot of mediocrity in who puts together the news. It's good to get it from sometimes people brilliant who are just putting occasional blog posts up there. I'm committed as an editor of all that to bring you the most insightful stuff you can, not a lot of the mediocrity you might get elsewhere. The two issues that I advertised in the Facebook Live mention of this are, one, Milo Yiannopoulos, who is giving a press conference at 3 p.m. Eastern Time in New York about the controversy with him being disinvited from the Conservative Political Action Conference, which is later this week. People are talking about that as if it's the moon landing. Of course, with the technology being what it is, the same technology that allows me to sort of parody the media and the news business by being here by, is it a swamp or the Gulf or an inlet? I don't know. And giving you the same information. I'm just getting it I'm recording it with my iPhone 6, getting the teleprompter type thing from my iPhone 5, my old one, and but nothing's preventing him from presenting his information to you just going online, doing a Facebook Live segment. There's something ironic, I guess even quaint, about all, making it such a big deal whether someone is disinvited from a conference when the technology is there. He could talk to you at any time. Whether his book contract was taken away from Simon & Schuster, he can just post the stuff. I'm not blaming him for this. I think he's been wronged, but the whole, he is upfront of who he is. I'm not going to pretend that that kind of lifestyle is okay with me. I present myself as a try-to-be observant Jew. I know very well what the Torah says about homosexuality, and he is, I believe, he claims he's a Jew. He has a Jewish mother of his mother, and that makes him a Jew. And yeah, it's a little bit higher of a standard. Maybe it's hypocritical of me, but Jewish males in particular, should not be flaunting their homosexuality, at least according to what the Torah says pretty clearly. But he is upfront about it. It's like I appreciate the song Freedom by the recently deceased George Michael. He's being who he is. He's not trying to have it both ways. Meanwhile, you have a lot of people at CPAC trying to have it both ways. Maybe the intention was always to remove him. Maybe they were tipped off that, this was going to come out at the last minute. Maybe all this controversy is good for CPAC just getting more attention, making it a bigger deal than it actually is. It's really just a gathering every year. The information could come to you anyway. Maybe it's all about the hype. I don't know, but I certainly think that the people who run CPAC, knowing a little bit about them, and the American Conservative Union, would be capable of doing something like that. Remember the phrase, conservatism Inc., as Keith Levenberg and I talked about late last night. But, you want the information from Milo, read his articles. He still does them, I think. Read what he has to say, see what he puts online, see his tweets. It's not that big a deal whether it was canceled or not, but it's people showing their true colors, and of course people talking about it non-stop over and over again. People, trying to get, it's like people trying to get an hour and a half worth of show where they can run a lot of commercials out of, a short statement. But they'll do it. You know who I'm talking about if you're watching this. But let's see how the Gateway Pundit, it's ironic that I mentioned that, I'm a try to be observant Jew, and homosexuality is not cool with that. But the Gateway Pundit is openly gay, and it's not like he flaunts that. It's not like the main thing he puts on there. And he puts a pretty good digest of the most important stories, just the right length of articles so you can get the information, the basic information, and he does it just frequently enough. And he presents it in a chronological way. That's why I use the Gateway Pundit as my main source. So, it doesn't bother me what his preference is. I'm not going to celebrate it, but he does a good job. He doesn't put it in my face. I can respect that. So let me read you the stories that made the Gateway Pundit, at least as of an hour and a half ago, maybe. I often will just download them here, and this is not the place for breaking information. But those stories, since sunrise this morning, which I brought you from downtown St. Petersburg over Tampa Bay, here are the headlines as Gateway Pundit has listed them. Trump was right. Riots break out in Rinkeby, Sweden. Hours after PM ridicules Trump, and that's with a video. Trump was right. Failing New York Times looks to be in serious decline. Then you have Marine Le Pen cancels meeting with Lebanon's Grand Mufti, refuses to wear headscarf. And this one is one I'm going to talk about because I have some personal feelings here. The nerve. But let me just give you the headline now. Hillary Clinton lashes out at POTUS, P-O-T-U-S, President of the United States, Trump, over Jewish cemetery desecration in Missouri. I'm not making this up. So let me first talk about that first story, which is the riots breaking out in a place called Rinkeby, Sweden. What the Gateway Pundit writes is the following. Migrant rioting broke out in a migrant enclave in Sweden on Monday night. This comes 2 days after President Trump said the migrant situation in Sweden was out of control. And it comes hours after Prime Minister Stefan Löfven ridiculed President Trump for his comments. By the way, the nice thing is I can look down at this, not make that much eye contact because I have something to distract you in the background, right? Then it goes, Here's what Express.co reported. Sweden's capital was plunged into chaos on Monday as police were forced to fire at rioters after violence erupted in the suburb of Rinkeby, which has been labeled a no-go zone. No-go zone is a synonym for Muslim areas where the police are afraid to go in. More and more of them in Europe. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a lot, especially striking in countries that aren't all that populous, like the Scandinavian countries. Going on from what is in the Express.co article, in a desperate attempt to protect themselves from a 30-strong mob, which was throwing rocks, the officers were forced to fire a shot into the rampaging crowd. Well, of course. I mean, it probably should have been done earlier. They're testing you. Just hours earlier, the Swedish PM hosted a joint press conference in Stockholm with visiting Canadian Governor General David Johnston. In a speech clearly intended to ridicule Donald Trump's speech over the weekend where he told a Florida rally that Sweden was facing a crisis, Mr. Löfven insisted the liberal nation was doing well and was a country of opportunity. Here are some of the clever comments people write at where this story appeared at thegatewaypundit.com. What have you been smoking? How can you ignore the obvious facts? Someone else writes, it's easier for them to make snarky comments, deny anything is wrong, and ridicule those that have the courage to acknowledge that there is a problem. So true, by the way. That's the way the liberals mock conservatives. That's the way they deal with the problems. Going on with that same comment, a lot easier than actually owning up to the mess they've created with their disastrous policies and attempting to rectify the problems. What do Western nations gain by allowing mass immigration from countries that are in complete disarray? Next comment. And I don't just go through them in order. I pick the best ones before I do this. Just want to make that clear. I respect your time. Well, Western nations have a low birth rate and saw they must bring in uneducated, lazy, violent Muslims to pay the pensions of those who do not have children. Or they're bringing in violent, inbred Muslims. I think that first paragraph was with some irony. Or they're bringing in violent, inbred Muslims to destroy nationalism and usher in a one-world government that consists of lazy, stupid people who can be easily manipulated. Choose the answer you like. Another one from a guy named Carl, taking something of exception with this, just pointing out, I guess, a corollary to this. He writes, "My wife now has a concealed carry license. Even here in the Michigan countryside, it is not Islamists who wreak havoc. It's interlopers and murderous foragers, urbanites from Detroit, Pontiac, Ann Arbor, and Flint who pose an exigent threat." Someone else makes this long point. "I honestly believe karma is on Trump's side, and anyone bad-mouthing him or attempting to ridicule him ends up getting ridiculed 10 times over." In addition to the riots with immigrants in Rinkeby and the mess in Malmo today, in Spain, a 32-year-old Swedish national, that of course can mean someone who's Muslim, who has Swedish citizenship, but I don't know. A 32-year-old Swedish national stole a truck loaded with butane gas bottles and drove it on the wrong side of the ring road at high speed and was arrested after being shot at by police. Some papers in Spain are saying he was under the influence of psychotropic drugs. Others are saying he has a history of psychological problems. Going on to the next story, also part of this very general theme that the mainstream media likes to avoid, and even some of the conservative media likes to play down because they're afraid, YouTube won't monetize the ads. But here's this one. Marine Le Pen cancels meeting with Lebanon's Grand Mufti, refuses to wear headscarf, and there's a video with that. This is again from the Gateway Pundit. French National Front leader Marine Le Pen canceled her meeting with Lebanon's Grand Mufti after she refused to wear a headscarf for the meeting. Le Pen told reporters, "You can pass on my respects to the Grand Mufti, but I will never cover myself up." And keep in mind, the election there is in late April, the first round of the French election, and she may well win. This has been a long process between Le Pen's father and her, but it's certainly seeming Trump-like. And the date of that election is April 23rd. And one reason she's going to Lebanon is there are a lot of French Lebanese, including Christians. And I think Lebanon has a Christian leader right now. He may have to defer to the Muslims, and it may be a figurehead type situation with Syria kind of being in control, or Syria formerly being in control there. I don't know what the situation is now because Syria's in chaos. But he may be playing for Christian, Lebanese, French votes. There's a reason a lot of Christian Lebanese have left. Christians used to be the majority over there. A lot of them went to France. The relationship with France and Lebanon is, since World War I, what did you call it? A protectorate, a French mandate. Like the British mandate was so-called Palestine, which we know as Israel, but it was called Palestine politically at the time. But Lebanon and Syria were under the protection of France, and that was after the breakup of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. Here's what Marine Le Pen told reporters. She wrote, "I met the Grand Mufti of Al-Azhar, referring to a visit in 2015 to Cairo's 1,000-year-old Center of Islamic Learning. The highest Sunni authority didn't have this requirement," talking about the headscarf, "but it doesn't matter. You can pass on my respects to the Grand Mufti, but I will not cover myself up," she said. Good for her. And the comments at the Gateway Pundit to this story certainly reflect that. Someone writes, "Now that's a feminist. You go, girl." Someone wrote the requirement in quotes, to wear a headscarf. And then someone points out, and I've talked about this the last few days, and meanwhile in America, Chelsea Clinton attends "I Am Muslim Too" protest. I like this one, this is fun. Someone writes, "She should set a counter requirement that Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdul Darian, Latin Darian, eat a pound of bacon during the meeting, that the meeting take place in a room filled with dogs, and that it begin with all present drawing a picture of Muhammad. Make these monsters that worship the murdering, slave-keeping, pedophile prophet do the equivalent of what they ask of others." Someone else writes, "Meanwhile, in London, women are embracing Islamic dress code and even holding fashion shows, wearing the hijab and hating on Trump." Another person writes, "Le Pen is a leader with iron in her. No groveling and bowing and scraping like we saw with the Swedish feminazi ministers on their visit to Iran." Feminazis is the term Rush Limbaugh long used for so-called feminists. "The feminazi cancer infecting Sweden will lead to the death of the nation as they attack white males and move heaven and earth to defenestrate," you don't hear that word often, "to defenestrate the very men who will at some point have to fight to the death on their behalf. But as they attack white males, they bow and scrape to Islamist males, make excuses for Islamist savagery and misogyny. If France does not elect Le Pen and the Front National, it will become another Sweden. Now, check out this one. Hillary Clinton lashes out at President of the United States, Trump, over Jewish cemetery desecration in Missouri. Here's what happened there. Hundreds of headstones were vandalized and toppled in a Jewish cemetery in University City, north of St. Louis. That is a very big Jewish area. I guess it's continuous in St. Louis. I was there a few weeks ago. Great kosher Indian restaurant there, but this is the main Jewish area of St. Louis, or certainly one of the couple of centers. Local officials calling the vandalism an act of intolerance and hate. But this, again, this is what Gateway Pundit writes. Hillary, crooked Hillary, she lashed out at Trump. Here's what she tweeted. JCC threats sent. Oh, should I do a Hillary voice? JCC threats, cemetery desecration, and online attacks are so troubling and they need to be stopped. Everyone must speak out, starting with POTUS. Well, do I even need to explain to you who Hillary took so much money from, whether they even allow Jews in the country, what happened to the old Jewish cemeteries in those countries? Hillary doesn't say a word about that. The hypocrisy is just galling here. How could she do that? And the quotes reflect this. And let me just read some of these comments. HRC and Obama built this. She acts as if Trump is the cause. She doesn't believe that, of course. Oh, the same crooked Hillary who took the money from these countries. You get the point. The nerve, the chutzpah, as we Jewish people would say for something like this. Well, anyhow, I think that's enough for a midday report. What do you think? I'd really like some comments, by the way. Comments, I know not that many people are watching. It's something I'm trying to be consistent with. Grow an audience, get the technical aspects down. But you get the idea of what I'm trying to do here. I'd love to get comments here. I'm not going to check the comments. One thing I'm doing is I'm doing this all by myself. I have some boxes. I put a little tripod on the boxes to get the right height. And I just am showing this can all be done by one person. Times have changed. You can get your information here, and you can get a pretty view. So anyhow, this is Adam Taxin, calling it the Midday Report. I'll be back in a few hours around, I guess, 6:15 Eastern Time with a sunset report. Maybe we'll even get a sunset. Who knows? But you'll certainly get some good information there. I'll be a little bit south of here then. Thank you for watching.